You are listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. I'm Elena Paventa, Executive Communication Coach and TEDx organizer. With each episode, I'll share with you communication tips and ideas from top business leaders to help you excel in your career. So, welcome to the next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast. And today, my guest is Kelly Beattie. She's president and executive coach at FirstStar Consulting Group, and she helps individuals and organizations to develop their staff and to build their leadership teams. So those are the topics that we love on Ideas and Leaders podcast. And today we're going to speak about emotional intelligence. Hi, Kelly. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's truly a pleasure.
So, Kelly, you're an expert in emotional intelligence. You're helping companies and helping leadership teams. So, what do you think are the first signs when you're working with leadership teams, with companies? What are the signs that the company needs a change?
The signs, probably the number one sign is about the self-awareness of the leaders. When I come into an organization, if they are talking about changing other people versus thinking about how they need to change, that's usually a pretty big indication that it might be a little bit more difficult. Emotional intelligence is so critical within leadership. It's one of the most critical upcoming competencies of leaders. Harvard Business Review article on it stated that searching for leaders who exhibit strong emotional intelligence is really critical to the success of an organization. And it directly impacts the culture that surrounds that particular leader.
So it's self-awareness, and when people start blaming others and not seeing what is that the reason might be in themselves, this is the sign that there is a need in changing company culture. And what are the ways of changing company culture? What are some of the methods that you use in your work?
Well, there are several methodologies that can be applied in changing culture. The first is we have to go in and do an assessment. We have to figure out where the company, the department, the organization, the team currently is. The culture work is done on multiple levels. So you can look at it from an organizational standpoint, from a particular department, from a team within a department, or at an individual level. So depending on the depth of change that the organization is seeking, we will go in and we will do an assessment to try to figure out where the company is, and then where the company or the department or the organization wishes to be. Then we identify the gap and we do a gap analysis as to where they think they are versus where they want to be. And depending on where that gap lies, then we'll go in and bring in the initiatives in order to affect that change.
So we need to decide where we are, where we want to be, what is the gap. And for sure, it is much easier to see from the outside, because from the inside, I think that it is challenging even for us as individuals to see that something is wrong, right? That's why we're working with coaches, with experts, and the same works in leadership teams, right? Do you notice sometimes that you discover something new and people are like, wow, I didn't know about this before?
Yes, we find that quite often. And you bring up a great point in the fact that as an external consultant, as an external coach, I see a different perspective because I'm not in it every single day. So I can bring a different side to the story. Working with an organization or working with some of my clients, they will often say back to me, well, why didn't I think of that? That seems like such an easy solution, Kelly. Why didn't I think of that? And they're in it every single day. And I just see it from an outside perspective. So it just brings a fresh awareness to the situation. Oftentimes people will come to me and they'll say, oh, we want to make a change. We want to do something differently. And then I offer that different solution. And they say, well, wait, we don't want to change. We don't want wait a minute, now they have to change. But by coming in from the outside and helping them navigate, oftentimes leaders have such fantastic strategic planning, they have strategic vision, but it's the gap in the change management to get there that they really need to seek that help.
Yes, absolutely. So after you do this assessment and you discover what is the gap that, for example, the company culture needs to change, are there any ways, any methods that you use how to do it? Because I think it is really hard to change a corporate culture that existed for many years already. So what do you do? How do you start doing this?
Yes. So there are, once again, that we work at many levels. We work at an individual level. We will go in and we will do executive coaching for the leaders themselves and being able to work one-on-one to help identify areas where they can make a shift in the culture, right? How are they impacting the culture? And then from there, we can go and start working with their immediate teams. So their direct reports. So we start with the leader and then we go down into their team and we start work. We can start to go in and we can do workshops. We do trainings and we start with the education piece. And the way that the education comes out is it's not, we don't design it as a 2-hour class and then you're on your way. It's really over time that we're going to give you a piece of information and then we're going to give you time to practice, right? So in order to truly affect a change, there has to be an application piece to it. So I can sit there and I can talk to you about emotional intelligence and I can go through the 4 areas of emotional intelligence. But until I give you tools to put that into action and to be able to practice, the change is going to be very difficult to start to affect.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned that emotional intelligence is very important. And I think that in many organizations, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you have a lot of experience in working with leadership, with the teams and with leaders. I think that a lot of attention in the corporations goes to the KPIs and not the emotions and emotional intelligence, but the IQ and numbers and the results. So how do you think it is possible to move? Because yes, we know that emotional intelligence is very important, and you already told about this, and everyone speaks about it. But how is it possible in practice to move the whole organization, or at least a team, towards this more towards a different style of leadership, this new style of leadership?
So it is, there is direct ROI when it comes to culture, ROI, return on investment, right? So like you were talking about the KPIs, and we want to see tangible things in order to change. If I make more widgets, the company is going to be able to sell those widgets and then they're going to be more profitable. But there are a lot of studies around the return on investment for organizations as it relates to some of, it's often called soft skills, but they're really interpersonal skills. And how do leaders truly affect change? And when we go into an organization, I emphasize that I don't need a title to be a leader, right? I need to be able to influence somebody else's behavior. That's truly what leadership is about. And I am able to get work done through somebody else. The way I conduct myself and the culture that I create around me directly impacts my ability to get work done through other people. Am I developing a team and developing a culture that people want to work with me, that they will go above and beyond because, you know what, I've shared my vision and they have buy-in and they have ownership and we're very collaborative and we're doing it together? Or is the culture I'm building one of, well, it's your job to make me look good, so you will do it because I say so? I worked with a woman who was the president of a multi-million-dollar organization. And some of the best leadership advice that she gave to me was, if I have to use my title to affect change, then I've lost. It's really about being able to create a culture around you that people feel included, that they feel valued, and then being able to then go out and have everybody understand the role that they play in that, and then celebrate the wins.
Yes, yes, indeed. I think that such people are the best leaders, those who manage to create this atmosphere, this positive vibes and warmth, and you know that this person will always support you. So I totally agree with you on this one. And what about the making decisions in such groups? Because leader is a leader, and what do you think? Don't you think that if we create such an atmosphere of love and friendship, and we are together in this, and we start discussing with everyone everything, don't you think that it can impact the result in a negative way? What is the experience, or should there be any level of this old school leadership, let's say, when the leader at some point finally has to make a decision, has to say that we need to do it like this, or the culture needs to change completely and become completely flat?
So just to clarify my earlier point, it's building a culture of collaboration. It's still about, like, work still has to get done, right? So it's about being able to have everybody do their part in order to be successful. When it comes to decision making, it's important as a leader for me to be clear as to how the decision is going to be made. So if you and I are talking and I need your input because you have expertise in that area, but ultimately I'm going to decide, I need to clarify with you and let you know that and say, I'm seeking counsel, but ultimately I'm going to decide. And what often happens within these teams, especially if it's high collaboration, the decision-making process is not clearly communicated. And so it causes confusion. If we all get a vote and that's the way that I want it to be decided, then I need to clearly state that and say, we're going to vote in majority of rules, or we're going to talk and wait until it becomes a consensus. And so we're all going to agree on how to move forward. There are going to be times as a leader where I need to make a command decision and say, this is the way that it's going to be. And we have to, there's certain policies, there's certain, government agents that don't like that flexibility, right? You have to follow the policies in order to stay compliant. And so it's about communicating how that decision is going to be made and having the people around you understand what their role is in that decision-making process.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you mentioned soft skills, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about this. So what do you think? Do we need more soft skills and to learn more soft skills during our early years of education, maybe school education, high school education, because in my opinion, I think that I'm a communication coach, and I can see that a lot of basic things that could be learned already in school, already when I'm working with corporate leaders, I can see that we still need to work on the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel the same? Do you think that we could include more of the soft skills in the earlier stages of our education?
Absolutely. When you have people graduating and going into the workforce, they especially with the younger generations have done an amazing job of helping to shift how people work. But because of technology and what they have at their disposal, making sure that they are equipped, that people in the workforce are equipped to be able to have good, strong conversations and to be able to develop those interpersonal skills that they need in order to be successful, to be able to have a conversation and to be able to manage conflict in a positive way versus going and talking about it to somebody else, right? So if there's an issue, the more direct that we can be, if we can start to educate those people, I shouldn't say those people, if we can start to educate college students, university students, high school students, even going into the middle schools and the elementary schools, and helping them develop skills on how to communicate differently, that could have a tremendous impact on, they have now graduated, entered the workforce, they would be better prepared in order to go in. And I work with healthcare systems, and I work with lots of different types of organizations. And it is always still fascinating to me that some of the basics are still really what's needed. Say please and thank you. If you have a team that works really hard, say thank you. And I've worked with physicians that have said, well, why do I need to say thank you? I'm like, just give it a try. And I'm like, just try it out. You know, after you have a difficult surgery, just thank the team and see how that changes the culture. And starting to loop in those interpersonal skills to show that appreciation and to go back to some of the basics. It's very common that I have gotten feedback from clients that have said, Kelly, it's kind of like you're teaching kindergarten again, to have us remember back of, say please and thank you, share, right? So being able to be collaborative and to build these skills in is really important.
Yes, absolutely. There is the book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, with the basic rules of how to deal with people. And there are things like smile.
Yes.
And this is and still it is still a bestseller. This is amazing that such books they are still on top of the top, because this is super important. And Kelly, you mentioned that the hard conversations and the importance of having those hard conversations on managing conflicts, not starting to gossip maybe, or complain, or try to forget about it. So what are some of the methods that you recommend? Yeah, because I think that all of us and our listeners, we can imagine a person or a situation that we have or had some problems with, how to manage those complicated situations.
So I actually come from a spot where I want people to embrace conflict. Conflict is a very healthy, natural occurrence. Whenever you have human beings interacting for any extended period of time, there's going to be conflict. And as a woman growing up, many times, I don't want to broad stroke it and say in the United States, but in the Midwest where I grew up, the Midwest United States, it's important to be nice. And so as a young child, I was taught to just go along, or don't rock the boat, or just be nice, or don't say anything. And what that does is it teaches people to be conflict avoidant, versus one of the things especially I tell my children, is when there's conflict, be kind. There's going to be conflict. And so when conflict arises, be sure to be kind in your conversations. I use that same methodology with my clients, and to say, well, think about why are you uncomfortable in this moment? What happened? And to be able to think about the relationship. And do you think that the other person cares about you and they want you to be successful? And if the answer is yes, then it's safe to have that conversation with them, to be able to say, you know what, that really frustrated me when you said that, and to have it be okay, and have the other person be able to say, oh my gosh, I that was not my intention. I am so sorry. A lot of times when I'm doing conflict management, we talk about the difference about intention versus impact. Most people have the very best intentions when they speak. They want to try to be helpful. They want to try to ensure your success. And it goes back to our earlier conversation about emotional intelligence. They're not self-aware of how their words land. And so by being able to offer a space for somebody to come back and say, you know what, Kelly, when you said that just didn't feel right to me, and give me an opportunity to, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That wasn't what I meant to say. And we hear things like, oh, it sounded so much better in my head before I said it, and I'm not sure how the words got jumbled coming out, right? And so by creating a safe space for it to be okay to you to be able to give me feedback in the moment and say, you know what, why did you say that in that meeting? And not make it a huge drama, just to be able to say, oh, well, this is what I was thinking at the time, and to actually start a dialogue around the conflict. And it's not personal. It's about the situation. It's about what happened. And to be able to hold a space to have a conversation will help to move that conflict forward.
Yes. I think that the problem is that we usually treat everything personally. And when someone is just trying to make it better for the relationship, for the organization, for the team, we start thinking about ourselves first. And, oh, why is he being so mean? Why is she being so angry? And by thinking about ourselves, we are not able to manage the conflict. So we probably need to learn how not to think about ourselves, or maybe wait a little bit and then answer, or then make decision, right?
It's also really helpful to ask yourself the question as to, why are you feeling those feelings, right? So if I say something to you and it doesn't land well, to pause and just ask yourself, why did I take it like that? What was it that about my words that caused you to feel like I didn't have best intentions when I spoke? And that can help give language to when you go and talk to that person, by being able to frame and say, when you said that, I felt like this, lends a great conversation, because then we're talking about the situation. It's not me attacking. It's about, well, I said it and this is why you didn't receive it well.
Oh, yes, indeed. So, for example, very often in the situation when someone is a team leader and they get kind of critical opinions of any kind from their team, you might think of, oh, maybe they don't think that I'm a good leader, and they start feeling insecure. So you're saying that it is good to share those feelings with the person, right? That I feel this way.
Yes. Oftentimes it does come back to our own selves and being able to be confident in who we are as a leader, to say, I'm going to make a mistake. It's okay. If I'm going to act in what I think is the very best way, but if I make a mistake, I'm going to own it and I'm going to learn from it, because we can't learn unless we do stumble a little bit. And when you have a team leader or a manager or even a director, and they are feeling insecure about a decision that they've made and somebody brings it to their attention, there's a greater chance that they're going to react negatively, because they already have those feelings. And by somebody calling it out will elevate that. Whereas if I own it and I say, you know what, thank you for telling me, I was feeling that way too. And thank you so much for bringing it to my attention. It's going to build that relationship between the two of us. And then the next time something happens, that conversation is going to become easier to do.
Yes. So those are some really great tips on conflict management and on having some difficult conversations that we need to have sometimes. So first, we need to understand that conflict is good. We need to be kind to others and to ourselves as well. Don't think that everyone is critical and they are just doing their best, just as you are. Don't think about yourself too much, and try to share your feelings and emotions. How do you feel in this situation? And just have this conversation. I think that this is really important to speak always when we have some misunderstanding. At least in my experience, when I had any kind of misunderstandings, conflicts after the conversation, it seems that you don't have any conflicts at all.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So oftentimes the anticipation of the conversation is far scarier than the conversation itself. Right. I get nervous and anxious because I'm not sure how the conversation is going to go. If you can approach it with best intentions, and to be able to say, you know, I am bringing my best intentions, and I'm going to assume best intentions on the other person's part, that conversation usually goes far better than what you anticipate before the conversation.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you so much, Kelly, for all your golden nuggets that you shared with us on Ideas and Leaders. So when our listeners want to contact you to ask you additional questions, where can they do it?
They can find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter.
Sure. So after we post the episode, we will put the links to your social media under the episode, so that our listeners can immediately, when they're still listening to us, go there, click the link, and write a short message. And thank you for the tips. Thank you so much, Kelly, for being on the podcast. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Let me know that you listened by tagging me in your LinkedIn profile and using a hashtag Ideas and Leaders. See you in the next episode.